Alright, video recap of round 4 of the MexInsurance FIDE Open, held the 16th through the 19th in Boise, Idaho. Coming into this game for the first 3 games sitting at a win, a half-point bye, and a loss. Trying to get to 2.5 headed into the final 2 rounds. And paired against a stronger opponent than I've had the whole tournament, although still a pretty significant rating disparity. I'm going to label this game as just one more time. The reason being is, while I've become more of an E4 player over the years, those of you who know me for going back a while know that I was primarily an F4 player back in my tournament games historically. And while I've become more of an E4 player, sometimes there's still that desire to break out F4 one more time, especially against somebody who's not as familiar with me. So I actually sat here for the first couple minutes. I let my timer, couple seconds, let my timer run a little bit. Tried to make that decision. Do I want to play F4 against somebody who's never seen me play F4? Or do I want to stick with E4? And I decided to go back and play old trusty F4 in this game. We had a fairly thematic move, D5. Pretty common. Knight F3. C5. E3. In a lot of ways, F4, you could imagine like C4, Knight C3. Like in English. The main idea being we're taking control over this E5 square. I like to play B3, Bishop B2. One of Black's strongest replies here is G6 and Bishop G7. And you have to be a little careful on the move order for White. Otherwise, Black might get on this long diagonal first, and then you're not going to be able to get your bishop to your optimal square on B2. But he played Knight C6. And I like to fight for control over this E5 square with Bishop B5. Obviously, this knight is the only thing from Black that's defending this E5 square, so why not attack it? You know. Bishop D7 breaking the pin. B3. Now I know I'm going to be the first one on this long diagonal. You can still go Knight F6, G6, Bishop G7 and challenge me. So I'm not preventing that. But he decided to play A6 and put this question to the bishop. And in a lot of my games, if you're familiar with me over the years, I really don't. I would rather have a more active position, if possible, and I don't like having to drop back to E2. So I played bishop takes C6. Obviously, he's probably going to take back with the bishop. Otherwise, why would you bother to put that bishop there if your intentions are to play B takes C6? Although there are a lot of people I've played over the years who will put the bishop on D7 and then still take back with the pawn here. Okay, now that we have the opportunity to jump into this E5 square, hit the bishop, we should do that. Now my opponent goes Knight F6. And here, I did take a couple of seconds, actually a couple minutes, I think. Because a move I've been historically very successful with in my tournament career is the move Knight C6. And on one hand, we're giving up our dominant knight on E5 for a bishop that's not doing anything, although moves like D4 later on may be very annoying, opening that light square bishop in the right scenario. The idea of Knight C6, though, BC6 has deeper roots that might transfer all the way even to an endgame. If we take this bishop and he has to take with the pawn, he's left with this double C pawn and the isolated A pawn. That's not probably going to be as big a deal if this game is decided in the middle game. But if we start trading equal for equal, and we get down to just pawns, or we get down to just pawns and some minor pieces, the game might just be dead lost in a lot of scenarios. Definitely with the pawns, it usually is, I would say. So, a lot of debate here, but then I figured the guy hasn't been around Idaho chess when I played a lot, so he has, like, no frame of reference. He would have no reason to have seen any of my games. He's never probably even seen me play an F4 opening against anybody. So my theory is, if he's allowing knight takes c6, and the pawn's going to have to take back, it's probably going to be there here in a second. So why not play bishop b2 first? And he played e6, and I'm like, okay, so knight takes c6 is not really on the radar. So it's probably going to be there here in a few seconds. So I castled. Bishop e7. And this is interesting because I really thought at this point, like, he's given me this move for a couple of moves. So it's not something I feel like he's really worried about. So he's probably not going to defend it. I figured I had at least one more move for him to castle. And then I would have played knight c6. And he played, and I played d3. And the guy played rook c8, and I was like, wow. I'm like, that in a way kind of surprises me. Like, rook c8 obviously is a very, very natural move. But he wasn't worried about knight takes c6. He hasn't been, I don't think it's even really been on something he's been thinking about the last several moves that he's made. Why would you defend the bishop now? Like, it just seems weird to me. I thought he was going to castle, and then I would have taken on c6. Now if I take, we don't get those double pawns that we were looking for on the queen side. But white has other plans he can try here. So knight d2. Want to just keep this long diagonal open for my dark square bishop. Especially since there's no g6 and bishop g7 to challenge it. And then h5. And h5 to me was the first real sign in this game that my opponent's not really sure what he should be trying to do. He's developed his pieces. He's tried to make natural moves. But h5 is just... Now what? I feel like he's basically saying I'm not going to castle anymore. I don't know. Knight g4 and just attack. Even then, knight g4, hg4, queen g4. I win a pawn. I'm hitting g7 twice. Like, that doesn't even do anything right now. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I played queen e2. A useful move, just connect the two rooks. Wait to see what black plays. Now that he's played h5, I'm not expecting castles. He played b5. So he's trying to expand on the queen side. But he's expanding on the queen side, and by h5 he was basically saying he's not really planning on castling. Is this a good combo? I don't think so. So I did decide that if I don't take the bishop now, bishop a8 and d4 could be annoying. With pressure on that long diagonal. Not often you would see a bishop go to c6 and a8 so early in the game. In fact, a8's not a square a bishop might normally go to. So I decided to use a different strategy here. I take the bishop, and then I play e4. So his king is in the center of the board. I'm castled away safely, so what I want to do is open this position to my advantage right away. He takes, and now we have two options. DE4 in a lot of ways is more natural. To bring the pawn this way, maybe use it for an f5 or an e5 push. But I noticed that knight e4 is interesting. We're putting pressure on f6. And if he takes back, which he did, is a blunder. Because we're hitting g7 is unprotected. But we have a bigger threat, and that's the rook on c6. So he has to defend his rook. And here, I also had an interesting decision to make. Yes, we can take on g7 and win this pawn. And really, the only other option that was jumping into my head was f5 might be simply crushing as well. Attacking e6 twice, trying to pry open the e-file for my rook to come over, pressure that pinned bishop. Like, this is probably just crushing as well. Then I had to decide, after bishop g7, rook probably has to go to g8. Do I play queen h7, forcing king d7? Because he needs a piece to defend that rook that can't move. Or do I play bishop g7, rook g8, and just drop back? Which is ultimately what I decided to play. The thing is, see guys, if we go queen h7 here, his rook is trapped. It has no defenders. He can sack the exchange. Or go king d7. Queen h7, king d7. Defending his rook. Obviously, we're winning that position as well, though. I played bishop g7 and then bishop e5. And then he played queen d5. So it's never too early to blunder, guys. So we're up a clean pawn and we're completely winning. But if I go to the wrong square, like if I go queen e3 or something, or queen h7, well, the game is over. Queen g2. You had a completely winning position and you blundered it within a couple of moves. So the only square, if I wanted to avoid queen trades and defend mate, would be queen e2 or queen f3. And in that case, I kind of just figured, why not just defend the queen with rook a e1? You know, why drop back to e2? My opponent here decided to try to connect his rooks with king d7. Is interesting, but again, I'm up a pawn. This is better for me. I played f5. The idea is I just want to open some more lines for my pieces. And my opponent played rook g4. So he's hitting our queen. And he wants to probably play rook g8 and put pressure on g2. Okay, makes sense. First we take on e6 with check. Very important check. Pawn takes. And then we take the queen. He has to take. And initially here I thought... Initial thoughts were that this could still be a pretty tight game. Like, the rook's going to come to g8. He's going to have some pressure here. I'm going to have to defend a little bit. And then he could try to force some pawns off the board. If he could get rid of the 4 pawns, queenside pawns versus my 4, and just have 1 pawn versus 2 with rooks or rooks and bishops like that, that could be a draw if I'm not careful. But then I realized that simply rook f7... and then the very natural move, rook g8, actually loses. Is interesting. I didn't see that originally. I thought he might have king e6 attacking my rook. And then there's actually no useful discover check here because he can just take my rook for no reason. But I have rook h8. And this is a +4 position already. But what I missed after rook g8... initially was there's actually bishop f6 saying you can take on g2 and then I'm going to take on e7. This bishop is pinned. It's attacked 3 times. You're going to lose material. So rook g2. Now we have to go to the correct square, guys. One square gives him a chance. The other square is completely winning. I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. If any of you guys said king h1, this is the correct move. Stepping away from the check. What is wrong with king f1? Well, if king f1, guys, there's just rook g1. And now black is actually slightly better. King f2, rook h2. Continuing the attacks. And then on king f3, this pin that was so powerful, 3 pieces attacking, well, black says... rook takes e1. Thank you very much. And now on king g2, there's king e8. And then everything gets liquidated. And this is actually a draw. It should be a draw. Perfect play. Straight zeros. So it's never too late to blunder. So we go king h1. Now there's no rook g1 check. We just take twice. And he has to... He played a move to be tricky here, which was rook f2. I expected rook c2, just grabbing material. But the idea is that maybe he's going to bring his rook in here in some line and try to take on h2 and make a draw by checking me over and over again. The other thing is if I play bishop takes e7, there's rook f7. And he wins. So rook f2 is tricky, but we have rook 1 captures... No, excuse me. I took with the f7 rook. The idea is we want to step out of this pin. And we want to keep this rook defending f1. Because if we get our rook all the way up here somewhere, and he's not in check, rook f1 is mate. So I played rook f takes e7, check. Obviously king steps on either one of these squares, it's mate in one. And if he goes king d8, there's going to be discovered check, a discovered double check. And then when he plays rook here, well, actually he's in double check, so he can't even take a piece. He can't take either piece that's checking him because he's in double check. So king here, we just take the rook, and then he takes and we just win easily. So king c8 is really the only move if you're not going to resign. And here, I was really proud of the way I converted this game towards the end. But here, I did make it a little bit harder than it needed to be. The reality is if I go bishop e5 and then rook a7, I should be mating him within a couple of moves. I did not see this. I saw that my bishop was under attack and I need to save it. So I attacked his rook. And this just draws it out a little bit. Rook takes c2. Try to force a rook off, which he does. And this is winning. This is winning. I have a pawn for... I have a bishop for a pawn. But you do want to be careful because if the queenside pawns get traded off, you're in a scenario where it's going to be almost impossible to win. So you have to do this correctly. Rook g4, he attacks. I attack his undefended pawn. And he goes c4. So he wants to liquidate the queenside pawns, and I have to find a way to do it when it's going to benefit me and I can still win the position. I don't want to trade too many pawns off. I pinned that pawn to the king. But what I missed was he can attack my bishop. Now I have to move my bishop again. Now he attacks the bishop again. And then I played bishop h8. And initially I was irritated because he has cd3. But then I realized rook d2. This is actually going to be a lot easier for me to win. Because I'm just going to win the d pawn. And these pawns, the way they are like this, are a whole lot better than two double d pawns. The d pawns aren't going to be able to go anywhere when they're doubled. So he didn't take, and here I decided to liquidate one pawn before throwing in this check here. The idea of this check is I don't like the way his king's getting active. I also had in mind that first game where if I had just activated my king a little bit more, I would have stopped his e-pawn and I would have won easily. So I was also thinking about that scenario. I don't want his king active, and mine can't get out right now. So I took again on c4. He took, and then I checked on f6. Now we take on a6. Again, we still have to be careful. It is winning, but it's not over. He checks. No, excuse me. He pushes the pawn. And now I want to stop this pawn. So the best square to stop this pawn from going forward is rook a3, obviously. Throws in the check, but that makes me happy because now my king's going to be able to be active in stopping this pawn. I'm going to need all these pieces to work together in order to convert this. Rook d1, saving the pawn from my bishop. Alright, and a few more accurate moves. King f3. I want to bring the king over. He's going to attack this. So he wants me to take this, and he can take this. I think I should still be winning that position, but that feels like it's a lot more difficult than it needs to be, especially since I can just defend this pawn, and I'm stopping this pawn, this d pawn. So he attacks my bishop. I moved it. Notice we're keeping an eye on the h2 pawn. Now I'm going to try to mop this. I'm going to try to win this pawn and then just start pushing my a pawn. So he's going to bring his king in. This is why I wanted to have my king, my bishop, and my rook able to stop the pawn. Check. Then king c4. And then we take on h5. And there's just not enough time for him to do anything to activate this last pawn. He played a few more moves. Rook here. And here I thought about a couple of different things, but none of them work. Actually, I thought way too long about an idea that just doesn't work. And decided that rook a5 is simplest, just holding onto the a pawn. And king d3 is actually a blunder. Now we attack this pawn. And now my opponent made the end easy. He just checked on f1. And what do we do, guys? We just block the check with the bishop. We're up a pawn, a bishop, and now we're going to take on d4 with check. And then we're going to be up 2 pawns and a bishop, which is going to be too much. So my opponent just resigned here. Definitely the most interesting game I had played to this point. Happy to be back with 2 wins in a row, so sitting at 2.5. 2.5 points really out of... I can't do the math. I had 2 wins and a draw. Because really, yeah. So, it's a decent score. Not where I wanted to be, but fighting my way back. And then hopefully looking for a better pairing the next day. Hopefully someone a little closer in rating was what I was hopeful for. So, again, I went back to the well with f4. I try not to do that too often in tournaments. And maybe if it was a different scenario and I was playing someone more like my level, maybe I would have stuck with my new main weapons, but it worked out well this game and I can't complain. The conversion technique could have been a little better back here. Here is where it could have been better. Bishop e5 and rook a7 should just mop up pretty easily. He's going to get checkmated. But other than that, a good game. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll be back with the Game 5 recap. And yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff at the bottom of the page. Check out my other social media platforms for more educational content. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.